Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss the basic virtualization concepts, ESXi overview, ESXi host build procedure in real-time scenario, and we can perform the lab for ESXi installation. Okay, and before going to start, as per our previous discussion, we should understand that virtualization means it is a technology. It allows you to transform hardware into software. That is called virtualization. So now today's session will understand the terminology. What is the terminology in our ESXi virtualization? Okay, if you see the basic virtualization concepts, this is the terminology we should be familiar from today onwards. We know already the laptop, operating system, application. These names are we already familiar. But from the virtualization perspective, ESXi server, sometimes we call it as host, or sometimes we call it as node, or we call it as server. Any name, the naming convention should be the meaning for the host, node, or server, everything is same. Okay, so anything we call it as it's a physical server. This physical server that provides the resources to the ESXi hypervisor. Hypervisor is a virtualization technology name. That is the actual virtualization technology name, ESXi hypervisor. ESXi full form Elastic Sky X. Okay, and the in real time scenarios, most of the companies they will use the any so many types of server vendors are there. I've just given the examples. One of the company servers are HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Dell, IBM, physical servers, and we also have so many other companies like Fujitsu, Unisys, HCL, so many companies. But in the real-time scenario, based on our customer requirement, we can choose one server to install the ESXi server. That is the first point. Even in the diagram, if you see the below architecture, there is a x64 architecture. X64 means any 64 architecture. 64 means 64-bit architecture. And any architecture, the hardware components are common: CPU, memory, network card, network interface card, and storage. Storage, you can use any of the disks. Any type of disk like SATA, SCSI, SSD, flash drive, any type of disk you can use to install the ESX server. If you see the hardware, the next layer is we directly install the vSphere ESXi, either 6.x or 7.x, because still some of the companies are using 6.7 and 6.5, and the few companies only migrated to latest version, which is 7.0. Okay, and the operating system means, in short form we call it as OS. Operating system is nothing but a software designed to allocate physical resources to application. If we want to run any application, we need a operating system. Suppose in our mobile also, if you are using a Samsung Android mobile, if without the Android operating system we cannot run any of the mobile application. And same way when it comes to the iPhone, even the iPhone without the aos Apple operating system, we cannot install any application. Same way for our servers and desktops, laptops, anything. So but the most popular operating systems are Microsoft Windows flavors. We discussed already in the previous session, Windows flavor, and Linux also most popular version is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, the latest version 8.5. And we also, some of the companies they use Solaris operating systems also. So this is the operating system examples. When it comes to the hypervisor, hypervisor is nothing but a specialized operating system or software to run virtual machines. So that is a main technology. So hypervisor, the VMware designed in a operating system level also. Operating system means ESXi is not a application, it's a hypervisor operating system. Okay, and also I mentioned operating system or software means, if you in our previous lab we installed VMware workstation also one of the hypervisor, but it is not a operating system, it's a software hypervisor. And the purpose of hypervisor is to, it allows you to run the multiple virtual machines. And I given the example, ESXi is the operating system, VMware workstation is software, and Fusion also software. And similarly, we have some competitor products for VMware. The competitor products is Microsoft Hyper-V, and we also have Oracle VirtualBox. we have other software products also. There is a some other competitive vendors also. For example, Nutanix also one of the vendor. They also have a hypervisor operating system that is called AHV, Acropolis Hypervisor. And even Citrix also have one of the hypervisor. That hypervisor name is Citrix Xen Server. But when compared to other third-party vendors in the current market, most popular server virtualization software is VMware ESXi. Okay. Now, on top of the ESXi, why we are installing ESXi means the main benefit is to create a production virtual machines. So now let's talk about the virtual machine definition. Virtual machine means it is a software generated machine and looks like a physical server, and a specialized application that abstract the hardware resources into software. That is nothing but a whatever we have the hardware resources, CPU, memory, disk, and NIC in our virtual machine, everything is software like vCPU, and memory become vmemory, disk become virtual disk, network card become virtual NIC. Whatever you have the physical IO devices, input output devices, even in the virtual machine we have all virtual CD-ROM, virtual SCSI controller, virtual USB, everything is virtualized. Okay. And the example I mentioned here, ESXi virtual machines and Microsoft virtual machines and Oracle box virtual machine. Suppose if we create a VM in a ESXi server, we call it as virtual machine. But when you are presenting to the customer, we can say this is one of the ESXi virtual machine. Suppose if you created VM on a Microsoft Hyper-V, we consider that as it's a Hyper-V virtual machine. And if you create VM on Oracle virtual box software, we consider as it's a Oracle box VM. Okay. Is these points are clear? This terminology we should be familiar for the upcoming sessions. Now, the another terminology, this all the whatever the pictures we have in this screen, all are I collected from the VMware website only. As per the VMware website, if you see the gray color is showing as physical server. On top, the light blue color is refers as a ESX. We install the ESX operating system. On top of the ESX operating system, it allows you to create a multiple virtual machine. For example, this diagram is showing the two virtual machines. So the virtual machine definition just now we learned. VM means it's a software generated machine. If you install any operating system on a virtual machine level, that is called guest operating system. The OS that runs in a virtual machine called guest operating system. So example, we can install Windows, Linux, Solaris. You can also install any of the third party pre-configured virtual appliances also you can install. Okay. And next point, application. Application means software. It's also one of the software that run on operating system consuming physical or virtual resources. Application you can directly run on physical server, or similarly you can directly run on a virtual machine as well. I given few examples. Suppose MS Office. It's our very familiar application. Microsoft Office. If you want to create a Word document, Excel sheet, PowerPoint, Microsoft Outlook, everything. If you want to use those application, we need to install a Microsoft Office. This Microsoft Office, you can install either on your normal physical server or laptop, or the same way you can install on your virtual machine. And the Chrome, it's a Google Chrome. This is one of the browser. And the SAP, it is one of the ERP application. This one also you can run same like physical server, you can run directly on your virtual machine. And Microsoft SQL, Microsoft SQL is a one of the database server. And the Oracle also have a database, and IBM also have a database DB2. So these are all the examples of application. Any application, same like physical server, you can run directly on a virtual machine as well. And vSphere, we are keep hearing the name vSphere. What is vSphere is, it's a just a product name. While releasing the any products, the companies they may choose some different kind types of names. VMware also selected the name as vSphere. It's actually server virtualization product name. So that is a point I mentioned here. Server virtualization product of VMware that combines the ESXi hypervisor and vCenter server and server management, vCenter server management platform. So here, uh, Today we are talking only the ESXi hypervisor. In the next classes, we'll discuss about the vCenter server. I will give you one basic importance of vCenter server. Suppose in our office we have one ESXi server. If you want to manage one ESX server, it's pretty simple. We can just connect to the ESXi server and create the virtual machine. That is very simple to manage single ESXi host. Suppose in our office we have a more than two ESXi server, or we have a more than 10 ESX or hundreds of ESX. If you have hundreds of ESX server, it is very challenging to open 100 consoles one by one. So to address that challenge, VMware released another product, that product name called vCenter Server. vCenter Server, the purpose of vCenter servers is to manage more than two ESX server. If you have it more than two ESX hosts, the better management tool is vCenter Server. If you have vCenter Server, it allows you to manage more than thousands of ESX hosts in a single vCenter console. That is the capability for the vCenter Server software. So once we are familiar with ESX product, and in the later sessions, I will explain you the vCenter server. And I will show you how to install the vCenter, how to configure and manage. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So ESXi overview. So as we discussed, ESXi is a bare metal VMware hypervisor. Why they are using the word bare metal means when you are installing any software directly on hardware, that is nothing but a bare metal. So ESXi is a bare metal VMware vSphere hypervisor. And ESXi installed directly onto the physical server, enabling direct access to all server resources. Whenever you use the word resources in server terminology, server resources means the main components are CPU, memory, disk, and NIC. ESXi server, the purpose we already know, allows to create virtual machines, and it's in same like a normal physical server. However, we create the server on a Windows physical machine, the same way they run the applications and the OS on a virtual machine. And ESXi can be installed on hard disk. Hard disk means we have multiple types of hard disk. We can install on a either if you have olden days we have SATA hard disk, SCSI hard disk, and later we have SSD solid state drives, and nowadays we have flash drives. Flash drives are the latest one. Any type of hard disk you can install the ESXi operating system. Not only hard disk level, we can also install on a SAN LUNs. Here SAN means storage area network and LUN means logical unit number. This SAN concept I will explain you in the next classes in detail, but understand that ESXi server not only on a hard disk level, we can also install on a SAN LANs, or we can also install on a SD card or SATA DOM. This SD card and SATA DOM is like a, whenever we purchase a physical server like a HP server, if you purchase HP DX380 model, or if you purchase the 580 generation 10 model, sometimes we no need to have a additional hard disk. While purchasing the server itself, it comes with a embedded SD card or SATA DOM. This SATA DOM also consists of ESXi operating system. We no need to install. Once you purchase the server, just power on, it will boot up with a ESX operating system. So this SD card and SATA DOMs are directly run on a directly attached with a motherboard. Even SATA DOM meaning is SATA means serial advanced technology attachment. DOM means serial advanced technology attachment on motherboard. That means it's directly attached on your motherboard only. So these cards also allows you to install ESX operating system. That much small disk footprint. So the next point I mentioned the same one. ESX has a small disk footprint for added security and reliability. With this small disk footprint, even recently we downloaded the ESX hypervisor. If you observe the size of the ESXi, it's a less than 400 MB. It's a around 386 MB size only. 386 MB means not only in a hard disk, you can directly run on a SD card or SATA DOM. That is the reason VMware mentioned that this is a small disk footprint and for added security and reliability. And ESXi 7.x allows it's allows up to you can create maximum CPUs 768 logical CPUs and 16 terabyte of RAM per host, and we can it allows you to create a virtual machine 1024 virtual machine. This is the ESX 7.7 series configuration maximums. Other day I show you the how we can verify the configuration maximum. In our Google you can just type VMware ESX 7 configuration maximum. When you type configuration maximum, you will find these values. Some of the interviews, the interviewer may ask how many virtual machines I can create maximum on ESX7. You can mention that it will allows you to create 1024 virtual machines. Okay, and the maximum supported memory for ESX is 16 terabyte. Okay, but in the real environment, no one will purchase this much high configuration of host. Based on the our requirement and budget, we will purchase the server. Okay, so this is the ESXi operating system overview, and this is the ESXi architecture. Again, this diagram also I copied from the VMware website. So this is the very clear explanation of how the ESXi architecture. Just now we discussed to install the ESXi operating system. If you see the below diagram, there is a disks. This is the circles refers to the data store, and the right side there is a multiple switches. This is the network. So to install the ESXi server, we need a storage, and to access the ESXi server from other system and to communicate the ESXi server, we need a network devices. This is the below one. Network and storage is compulsory to maintain the ESX server. So if you see the inside the ESXi operating system, the main core of the operating system component is VM kernel. This is the main ESXi operating system core component. Using the VM kernel, if you want to access this VM kernel, we can access using local support console that is called ESXi shell. Like in our normal Windows system, if you want to open a command prompt, how we are opening a start run cmd, it will open a command prompt. Similarly, to access the ESXi server commandly, if you want to access to terminal mode or command mode, that is the method is local support console, which is ESXi shell. So ESXi shell purpose is it allows you to connect to the VM kernel. Okay, and there is another point, VMware management framework. This management framework, it has a management framework, but this management framework is a agentless system management. Other day I shown you after install the ESX server, you can just open a browser, type the ESX host IP address, it will launch the ESX homepage. That means there is no agent to manage the ESX server. So that point they mentioned here, agentless system management. And second one, CLI commands for configuration and support. Suppose if you want to configure anything, either you can, whatever you can perform from the graphical mode, the same thing you can also perform using CLI command. CLI means command line interface. Okay, and if you want to monitor the ESXi server also, there is a default common information model. This service is default by default. It will run on the VM kernel level. This is also agentless hardware monitoring. In order to monitor your ESXi server, you no need to install any of the agent. Without agent, we can monitor the ESX box. You may ask question why I need to monitor the ESX box. Let's say we are nowadays due to during the COVID situation, everyone is doing work from home. No one is working from the offices. Suppose our data center is in a remote location. We are working from Andhra Pradesh and our data center is in a remote location. Let's say it's in the Delhi data center. I am trying to access my servers from a Hyderabad. In order to access your server from Hyderabad, we need some remote management console to connect to the server, and we also need a VPN to access the servers. All of the sudden server is down, and how we can identify our server is down, or how we notice this server is having some hardware issue or server is having some connectivity issue. In order to identify all the server down scenario, service down scenario, any performance issues, to identify all these scenarios, we need to monitor the servers. So either it is a physical server virtual machine or ESX, any type of server in data center infrastructure, the recommendation once you set up the server, at the end of the server configuration, we have to set up a monitoring. But in the ESX scenario, you no need to install any agent. Without agent also, we can monitor the ESXi box. We can monitor based on the ESXi IP address, or you can monitor ESX using the SNMP protocol. SNMP means Simple Network Management Protocol. Either you can monitor through SNMP protocol or you can monitor through ESXi host name and IP addresses. Okay. And another VMware management framework is it's all the command line shell. That is what they mentioned here. And it allows you to create a multiple virtual machines. Some of the interviews, they will ask you to explain the ESX architecture. So then you can explain this diagram like a ESX main core component is VM kernel. To access the VM kernel, we can use ESX shell, and it doesn't require any agents to maintain the ESX host and to connect the host via command line. And the purpose of ESX is it allows to create a virtual machine, and also it require a network and storage to manage the ESX server. Clear? Now we'll verify the ESX host build procedure. Same like other day we discussed about virtual machine build procedure. Whatever the task we are performing in the real-time scenario, always we should maintain the standard procedures. The standard procedure is we should have a pre-installation steps, installation procedure, and post-installation steps. Other day we discussed about the virtual machine pre-installation steps, what is the installation process to create the VM, and what is the post-installation steps. Same way, today's session we are going to discuss the ESXi host build procedure. In our build, before install the ESXi box, first we should understand the pre-installation steps. Normally in a real-time scenario, we have to verify the hardware compatibility list. Suppose if your customer is a new customer, new to the ESXi VMware products, the customer may ask you as a VMware administrator, we should verify hardware compatibility list and provide the list what are all the servers are compatible to install ESXi 7.0. Suppose if you want to install on a HPE server, we need to provide the supported model like HP DL380 model or HP DL580 generation 10 model to install the ESX server. That is the first step. Suppose the customer is more interested on any of the specific vendor. Those specific vendors also you can find the hardware compatibility information from the VMware website. That is the first point. And the second point, select the compatibility hardware. So while selecting the compatibility hardware, again, it's subjected to be customer's requirement. If customer want to deploy a server on a remote branch office, normally for remote office branch office, we call it as remote office branch office. For remote offices, we not recommend to purchase a high configuration blade server. We'll go for a tower servers. Suppose if instead of remote branch, if you want to configure a new server on our existing on-premises server, on-premises data center. If your on-premises data center, the main office, better to go with a rack mount server. Suppose the customer is not a medium scale industry, it's a large scale industry. For the large scale scenario, instead of going for rack mount server, we will go for a blade server. Blade server is nothing but it consists of multiple blade. Each blade acts as a one server. Normally blade servers are like you can purchase a 4 blade server or 8 blade server or 16 blade server, depends on the customer requirement. So that is the reason. Second one is select the compatibility hardware. And the third one, do the server cabling work with help of vendor. Suppose we already purchased the server, it's delivered to our data center. So initial days, we should be monitor or we are just coordinating with the respective team to place the server into the data center rack. Once it's placed in the data center rack, we need to do the cabling work. If it is a very small organization, some scenarios, VMware administrators also will help to do the cabling work. And most of this time, there will be a cabling vendor. They will help us to do the cabling. Okay, so make sure that all the server cabling should be intact. And once the server cabling work is finished, the next step is we have to configure the HPE ILO. If your server is HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise Server, we need to configure integrated lights out, in short form ILO. What is ILO means? It is a remote management tool to access your physical hardware. So initial days, we no need to go to the data center to do the initial setup. The only initial setup is just assign one IP address for ILO wherever the server it is. Either the server is in India, any remote state, or if it is in another country also. If you have ILO IP address, we can connect the servers remotely. Okay, suppose if the server is a Dell server, for the Dell server the remote access is concept is same like ILO, the only the name is different. The name is IDRAC. IDRAC means integrated Dell remote access control. The name itself you can understand, remote access control. If we have IDRAC IP address, we can connect the servers remotely and start installing the ESXi box. And the same way for IBM, suppose if your server is IBM server, IBM server, the tool name called RSA. RSA means Remote Supervisor Adapter. Suppose the Fujitsu is also the company name. This Fujitsu also have a remote supervisor IP that is called IRMC, Integrated Remote Management Control. Okay, if you based on your server name, you can choose your remote control information, just to configure that ILO or IDRAC based on the server. Once you configure the ILO, you just move to the next step, connect to the server using remote management control IP. These all are the examples of remote management control. Suppose my server is HPA, you can just connect to the HP ILO IP address. Once you connected to ILO IP address, the procedure is install or upgrade the latest firmware. Why I mention as install means if your server is very fresh system, there is no OS, that is called you just install. Suppose you are using a existing server, you are trying to install a ESX box. Before installing ESX box, make sure that all your hardware firmware drivers should be up to date. So if you want to make the up to date firmware, we have to upgrade the existing firmware to latest. Okay, the latest firmware, normally if you are using a HP server, we can download firmware from HPA website. If it is a Dell server, you can download the firmware from Dell website. Similarly for other third party vendor hardware. Okay, so firmware means it will provide all the hardware device drivers. Okay, how our mobile nowadays, if you are using any application, after a month or 2 months, it will provide the latest updates. Same way for hardware also, it requires some latest patches and updates. Why I need to do the firmware means this firmware will help you to resolve the latest bugs. Okay, and the next point is enable RAID. RAID means redundant array of inexpensive disk. RAID, we have multiple RAID levels, RAID 0, RAID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Usually the most popular RAID levels are RAID 1 or RAID 5. This also we need to enable at the BIOS level. Why I need to configure the RAID? Suppose in our laptop, normally our laptops comes with a one hard disk. My hard disk size is 1 TB. In other words, it's 1,000 GB. So if you have 1,000 GB laptop hard disk, all of the sudden your hard disk got corrupted. Your laptop, if your hard disk corrupt means no other choice, we lose the data until unless if you have a backup, we can restore the data. If you do not have backup, your data will be gone. So same scenario, if you think about the production server ESXi machine, on my ESX server, I am running the multiple production virtual machines. That scenario, if your ESX server is all of the sudden down and your hard disk got corrupted, it will be like a huge impact to your business. So to avoid this kind of situations, what we do is in our every physical server, we maintain two hard disks. If you have a two hard disk, the purpose of two hard disk is the RAID 1 configuration required minimum 2 hard disks, maximum you can configure up to 32 hard disks. If your minimum requirement is 2 hard disks, if the 2 hard disks, if I configure the RAID 1, the purpose of RAID 1 is in case of one hard disk is corrupted, the RAID 1 purpose is it will always mirror the data from one hard disk to another hard disk. In case of server is down suddenly, the hard disk one is failed, nothing impact to the production, immediately second hard disk will boot up. So when the second hard disk is boot up, what we have to do is we need to call the hardware vendor like HP or Dell, IBM, any vendor, whatever the server you're using, you can call to the respective vendor and get it replace the faulty hard disk immediately. But during until you get the new part and replace the hard disk, there will be no impact to production if you configure a RAID. So now tell me, are you recommend to configure RAID or not recommend to configure RAID? We always recommend to configure the RAID. But this RAID configuration we can perform only on the BIOS level. Okay, BIOS means basic input output system. It's directly on the hardware level. And how about the RAID 5? RAID 5 means generally it is a minimum requirement for RAID 5 is 3 hard disks. It will copy the data in a, it's a disk with parity. So parity, that is the reason we'll go with a minimum 3 hard disks. If your organization recommend for RAID 1, you will go with RAID 1. If your organization recommend for RAID 5, you can go for RAID 5. But the only the thing is, while installing before installing Esx server, the best practice is we should configure RAID at the BIOS level for your hard disk, local hard disks. Okay, and another point, enable Intel VT. Normally, as per our initial discussion, in our processor we have only two popular vendors, one is Intel and another one is AMD. If your server is running with the Intel motherboard, enable Intel VT on your BIOS level. By default, the motherboards comes with VT disable. You should enable the VT. VT means virtual technology. When you enable Intel VT, then only it will allows you to install our virtualization software ESXi. Okay, and same way if your motherboard is with the AMD motherboard, you can enable the V option. If you enable a V option, it will allow you to install your virtualization software ESXi server. Okay, this is also one of the pre-install requirement. And then download the ESX7 ISO or custom ISO. There is a option for a custom ISOs. I will show you the custom ISO, uh, how we can download the custom ISOs. Suppose if I open a browser, just type in the Google VMware downloads, VMware ESXi download. When you type ESXi download, see while downloading the ESXi operating system, so it's asking us to log in. Okay, it's asking to register. Let me connect. Okay, let me type again. Direct vSphere 7 download. Okay, when you type the vSphere 7 download, you will find your multiple flavors: essential, essential plus, standard, enterprise, enterprise plus. Suppose your company procure the license for enterprise, you can download the this specific download. Suppose your company purchase enterprise plus, you can download the enterprise plus package. Okay, for example, I'm selecting the enterprise plus, go to the downloads. When you select the downloads, just selected version, if you drop down, see it's the VMware releases from 7.0, and after 7.0 there is some updates are released. One patch release 7.0b, and U1 means update 1, update 1c, update 2, update 2a. So VMware keep on releasing some of the updates. Normally whenever they release the latest patch, the only purpose is it will fix all our previous product bugs. Okay, suppose I'm just selected the latest one, 7.0. Just now we discussed about ESXi software is just a small footprint. See, if you notice the ISO file size is only 390.11 MB ISO size. Even if you download the offline bundle size is 372. So why they given two packages is ISO is for a fresh installation, and offline bundle if you are using a ESXi 6.7, if you're planning to upgrade to the latest 7, you can download the zip flavor. Okay, for our scenario, normally for fresh installation, offline bundle is not required. We need to go with a ISO image. This is the first step, product download. If you see the next step, you can find the drivers and tools. There are some drivers and tools, and open source. You can see the customized source. This point I mentioned in the notes. So this is the same point I mentioned here. Esxa 7.0 or custom ISO. Why VMware giving this custom ISO feature is there are multiple vendors. Sometimes we no need to install the firmware separately. I just want to comes with the Dell drivers also comes with 7. So instead of doing the firmware separately and the ESX separately, sometimes there is a some custom ISOs. If your hardware is Dell EMC, if you download this hardware, it will not only install ESX 7.0, it will also install the necessary hardware drivers. That is called custom ISO. It's not directly for all vendors. There is a specific vendor. This ISO for only for Dell EMC server. If your server is Lenovo, this one. Fujitsu image. Hitachi image. NEC hardware, NEC image. Even for HPE server, there is a HP custom image. You can download this one. So it's up to the your company standard. Some companies prefer to do why we are doing the firmware separately and the ESX separately. Why don't we use the customized one? That scenario, you will use this image instead of using the direct ESX ISO. Okay, this point is covered here. Download the ESX ISO or custom ISO depends on the customer requirement. Okay, and the next point, get the IP settings from networking team or IP inventory list. Normally some companies IP addresses, all information is maintained by networking team. We need, before installing ESX server, we required IP address to install the ESX box. Those IP information we need to ask the network team to provide the IP address details. The IP address, the complete basic concept of IP address, I will cover in the ESXi networking class. Okay, just understand why we need the IP address. Every system have a one host name and IP address. Even other class we discuss. Suppose our system, if you want to verify the IP address, what is the command? For Windows system, command is ipconfig. When you type ipconfig, you will find your local system IP address. Suppose the Linux system, you can type the command ifconfig to find your IP address. Here I mentioned the point is IP settings. IP settings means it consists of IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. These 3 points considered as a IP settings. So IP means Internet Protocol settings. These settings normally maintained by a network team or some companies they maintain a inventory sheet. In that inventory sheet, there is a which are all the IPs are in use, which IPs are not in use. Those free IPs you can choose for ESX. Well, suppose I have 1 to 100 IPs. Out of 1 to 100 IPs, 80 IP addresses are already in use. I assigned for some other servers. So 20 IP addresses are free. In that free, you can pick one IP address before installing the ESX box inventory sheet. And the next one, as we discussed, ESX server can be installed on a either local hard disk, you can install on a SAN storage or SATA DOM. So even the storage details, once we install the ESX server, it will allows you to create a multiple virtual machine. If you want to create multiple VMs, we need a storage. So that storage information, initial days, we need to get the information from storage team. Suppose if your organization is small, storage also maintained by VMware engineers. If your organization is a very large scale organization, there will be a separate teams for networking, separate team for storage. But our main key point here is get the storage details before install. Okay, and again create a host record and PTR record. PTR means point record, A record means host record. These all the records we should create in a DNS server, because the DNS server means it's a domain naming server. The purpose of DNS server is it resolves IP address to host name to IP address. This DNS also I will explain in the next class in detail. Okay, but the basic point for DNS is domain naming server. The purpose of DNS, mainly for name resolution purposes. It resolves host name to IP address, host IP address to host name. For example, I will show you how to. resolve the DNS. I just type the IP config. My system IP address is, this is the Wi-Fi IP address. Let me see the local IP address. My local IP address is, this is the Ethernet IP address. Ethernet IP address is, this is the one. So let me ping the IP address now. 192.168.10.100. Ping space -a 192.168.10. Now the IP address is 100. See, it is not pinging. It started pinging. If you see, ping-a means when I type the IP address, it is showing the host name and also the ping status. Same way, if I type the -a host name, if I type my host name, let's say HEFI J4 200. If I type with host name, even when you type with host name also, you'll find the IP address. Because I type only the half name, we need to type the full name. Ping-a full name. Now when you type, see, when you type with the host name, again it will resolve with the host name. It is showing the IP address. This is showing the IPv4 IP address. Okay, and you can see minimum 0 millisecond, max 0 millisecond. There is no packet loss. Lost is 0 loss. That means IP is resolving. In order to do this resolution, the only thing is our system should be reserved in a DNS server. Okay, like our home flats or any of our homes, normally our home details, everything is we registered in a home registration department. Same way in our organization, all the assets information, computers, laptops, servers, ESXi hosts, VMs, all information should be registered on a DNS server, domain naming server. The name itself says domain naming server. It maintains all the servers host name and IP address, and also it will resolve the host name to IP address to host name. And when you see here two types of records, host record means it will resolve name to IP address. Suppose the PTR record, that means IP address to host name. It's a vice versa. Okay, these are all the ESXi server pre-installation steps. Can you just tell me if I miss any one of this step, what is the impact? Suppose the first step, verify hardware compatibility. I didn't verify my hardware compatibility status. I straight away start to install the ESX server. Will it be recommended or not recommended?
No, not recommended.
Not recommended. We should, before start the installation, we should verify first whether this hardware is compatible or not. Okay, and that is the reason. Suppose my I'm ready to install ESX server, but there is no server cable. The server is not connected to the network yet. Without connecting also we cannot work. So this is also important. And even if you normally the servers always in a either on premises data center or remote data centers, wherever we are, if you want to maintain the servers remotely, the configuring the HPILO, Dell ID, these configurations are very important. And also this for security reasons, always the server should run running with the latest firmware. And also for hard disk safety purpose, we need to enable the RAID at hardware level. And also VT technology should be enabled to run the ESX OS. And without operating system, we cannot install ESX. And IP settings also needed. And we also needed storage details and DNS records. This all information is needed. So suppose if I want to install ESX server, so my first requirement is I need to configure a DNS server in my home lab. Suppose today, if I want to show you in our home lab, first we need to configure the DNS server first, and after that download the ISO. Some of the steps are we can exclude in a home lab. In our home lab, we are not using a real server hardware. That's the reason these three steps are we can ignore. We can straight away download the ISO file, mount, and we can start. But also we need the IP settings. We'll prepare one short IP list to plan to install our lab ESXi host. Okay, so is there any questions on this pre-installation steps? If you're okay, we'll move on to the installation procedure steps.
Yeah, clear.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now we can move on to the ESXi installation procedure. In our installation procedure, we already did in our previous session, which is pretty simple. Just mount the ISO. But in our real time, how we mount is there is a virtual media option. If you are using HPE ILO integrated light source, there is a virtual media option. Using virtual media option, you can mount your VMware ESXi ISO. Suppose the Fujitsu hardware, you can mount the Fujitsu virtual media, log into the Fujitsu IRMC console. In that console, there is an option to mount the ISO. Just use that virtual media option, mount the ISO. Once you mount the ISO, we are ready to restart start the operating system. Sometimes it will mount, it will detect the ISO and it will start the installation immediately. Some scenarios we have to reset the physical server using the power management option. In that remote management console, there is an option called power management. Using that option, we can reset the ESXi box. Once you reset, it will start booting from the ISO file and monitor the ESXi booting process from the remote management console. And just we can follow the on-screen instructions to install the ESX. Other day we did the installation. What is the main key to press install is press F11. Once you press F11, it will start the installation. Okay, so installation procedure is very simple. The only important thing is before installing, we should follow all the pre-installation steps. Okay, and this is the installation procedure. Now let's move on to the post installation steps. Post means once the installation is completed, what we have to configure on a ESX level. So this is the main key items I covered here, and some of the items I mentioned as a optional. These optional requirements are it's subjected to be customer requirement. It's not applicable for every customer. Few customers only it will applicable. Okay, so let's start discussing the one by one. What is the ESXi post installation steps? Post installation steps include by default ESXi server. In our earlier architecture, we discussed about ESXi server we can access through command line. Command line commands for configuration and support. For CLI means you can also say ESXi shell. For command line method, by default the command line method is disabled. We have to enable the SSH. Either you can enable SSH in the direct console interface method, or you can connect via SSH, change the permit root login. Change the permit root login. Default permit root login is no. When you change the permit root login to yes, that means it will allow you to access. It allows you to access the ESX host via command line. Okay, this is the important first step once ESX is installed. And the second one, enable the NTP. NTP means network time protocol. This protocol, this port number is 123. These port numbers are important. Some of the interviews, they will ask what is the NTP port number. So that time you can just mention the port numbers. Just remember the port number. NTP port default port number is 123. This NTP purpose is time synchronization between ESXi host and virtual machines. Suppose my ESXi server is running in a US time zone. So when your server is in US, we should not supposed to configure the time in a India time. So we should change the time zone to US time zone. When you change the host level time zone, enable the NTP. What is the purpose of enabling NTP is whatever the VM you configure on that particular ESXi host, all VMs time also sync with the ESX time. So VMs also by default, it will shows the time as a US time zone. Not only US, wherever you configure, just maintain the NTP and also choose the specific region or location time zones. Clear? Now, as we mentioned, once the host is configured, everything completed, the recommendation is we need to monitor the ESX. We can monitor the ESX host in a multiple ways. One recommendation you can monitor using ESX host name and IP address, or another way is we can also monitor host using SNMP port. Default SNMP port is a disable state in ESXi. To monitor host, we need to enable the SNMP. SNMP ports for ESXi is 161 and 162. These two are the default port numbers. So this is also one of the recommended post installation step. And then fourth point is apply ESX host patches. Suppose I am installing the ESX host today. Today is the 27th January. I install the ESX box freshly ready. But my customer want to move this host to the production in a next month, either February or March. During the within this time gap, VMware may there is a chances of releasing the latest patch. The normally VMware, there is no specific time. They can release any time whenever they find the product, more product bugs on ESX software, they will release the latest patch. To resolve all those bugs, they will address those bugs with a latest patch. So if the, let's say server I build it today, but I'm moving the server in the next month. So next month when there is a chance of releasing the any new patch within this time frame, that scenario only you can apply the latest patch. If there is no latest patch, you already install the ESX with the latest version, no need to do the any latest patching. So that is the reason I mentioned as a optional. Okay, it's not applicable for every scenario. Some scenarios only it will applicable. And once the ESX server is ready, and another key important point is configure ESXi host networking. This is completely a new concept. I will explain in the next session. And during the networking only, I will cover the IP address, basic networking concepts. But why we need ESXi networking means, just understand that normally if you are in our office, if you have a 10 systems in our network, to communicate between one system to all the remaining 9 systems, networking is required. To communicate all the systems, we need to use a networking device that is called switch. Even if you notice in the small branches like banks and any of the post offices, you will find multiple systems, all the systems connected with a one switch. So this is a physical switch. Similarly, in our ESXi host, if I configure a 10 or more than 10 virtual machine, to communicate all my virtual machines, I required a switch, but that switch is not a physical switch. It's a software generated switch that is called virtual switch. Okay, so in the next class, I will show you how to create a virtual switch. And before creating virtual switch, we need a basic knowledge on networking and LAN, MAN, WAN, IP addressing. These basic concepts are needed to understand the vSwitch concept. Okay, and the advanced of vSwitch concept is DV switch. DV switch means distributed virtual switch. Normally DV switch concept I will cover in a vCenter server, because DV switch feature available only in a vCenter server. ESX server doesn't have a DV switch feature. Okay, so I will explain clearly in the next sessions about the networking, vSwitch and DVSwitch. And same way for ESXi storage also. Normally in our storage, we have a multiple types of storage. If you divide the storage into mainly the four categories, one is local storage and second one is NAS. NAS means network attached storage, and iSCSI means internet small computer system interface. This is a iSCSI SAN. This is also one of the storage box, and the SAN is a storage area network. Normally SAN means we also call it as FC SAN, fiber channel SAN. The storages will use these four types. Either you can use local. If it is a small branch office means you can go with a local. Suppose it is a normal office, a small scale industry, you'll go with a NAS. If it is a medium scale industry, you'll go with the iSCSI SAN. If it is a large organization, if you are a very big bank, State Bank of India or any of the major banks, they always prefer to use a fiber channel SAN, because the data is very critical. Due to data sensitivity, they will go with a high standard sandbox. Even the cost wise also, if you compare the cost, local storage is very cheap, and after that the normal cheap cost is FC SAN is high costly, and the iSCSI is medium range, and then NAS storage. Okay, this we have a ESXi server have a facility to work on the any type of storage, but as a VMware systems engineer, we need to learn all the concepts. But if you join any of the organization, it's subjected to be company choice. Company may not use all four storages; they may use any one type of storage. But we should learn all these four concepts. Okay. Once installation is completed, there is another key point is we need to assign the license. By default, when we download the ESXi server, the license is like a evaluation mode. Evaluation mode is only 60 days. After 60 days, we cannot perform any operation. It says license is expired. So to avoid that, better once we installation is completed, we need to activate the ESXi server license. Okay, this license again it's subjected to be customer's choice. Either you can use essential, essential plus, standard, enterprise, enterprise plus. whatever you want to use, you can use. Only difference between all these license features is cost. There is a cost variation and also the features. Enterprise Plus, it have all the complete ESXi product features. If you use the Essential, you won't get the advanced features using ESXi Essential. Okay. And the next one, disable ESXi lockdown mode. There is a feature called in ESXi server that is a lockdown mode. Lockdown mode means when you disable this lockdown mode, it allows you to manage the ESX server only from ESX IP address. Suppose if any other system you want to try to manage the same host, or if you want to manage the same host from other vCenter or any of the remote vCenter, it won't allow because we already disabled the lockdown mode. If you disable, we cannot access from other networks. It will allows you for whatever the network you allow, and whatever the vCenter you allow, the specific vCenter only we can access the ESX host. Other vCenters it won't allow you to manage. Okay, I will also show you each and every step when we are doing the lab. And configure syslog server. Syslog server means it is a normally syslog server we will use to maintain a centralized logs. Every day when we perform any activities on ESXi host, whether you create a VM or delete VM, or if you do some modification on virtual machine or ESX host, every activity is stored on a logs. But at certain time we can maintain the logs only for this 1 month or 2 months or 6 months. Suppose if your system, if your ESX server have a logs more than 1 year logs, obviously your storage will full. So in order to avoid that situation, what we need to do in our real time is we need to maintain a separate centralized log services log server. We also call it as LMS, log management server. If you have a centralized LMS servers, in that LMS you can move this all these ESX logs to the centralized log server. That is the purpose. In order to do that configuration, we need to enter the remote log server information on a ESX server. Okay. And the next point, validate the ESX host connectivity status and health checks. So before giving the ESX host to production, we need to verify all the connectivity status. Let's say we installed, we assigned the IP, we enable the storage, everything we done, but we need to validate all the connectivity, whether the host is accessible normally or not, and the health status is good or not. There is a chances after you build the ESX host, all of the sudden your motherboard may fail or your hard disk may fail, because it's a, at the end of the day it's a physical server electronic equipment. Anytime anywhere it can be bad damaged. So to avoid that situation, we need to we need to validate all the health checks on the ESX host, and create one test VM before moving the host to the production. Create one or two test VMs and test the image backup. We need to create a virtual machine backup, whether our new ESX host VMs are able to create the successful backups or not. This is also one of the important step we need to do in the real time scenario. And open the necessary firewall ports. This is a optional. Why I mention optional is sometimes the backup server is in the some offices, ESXi host, backup server all in a same network IP. Suppose if your backup server is in a different network IP series, that scenario we need to open a firewall ports also. Okay, to access the our ESXi host and virtual machine from the backup server. Okay, and validate the ESX host disk space, because we did the ESX operating system. We also did the some ESX host patches, and we are doing the ESX hardware firmware. There is a chance of doing multiple patches and all to avoid before moving the host to the production, just to verify the disk space whether there is any space issues, we have enough free space or not. That is also one of the recommendation. And finally, set VMs auto start with host. This is the feature I will show you in which scenario we will enable the auto start. Auto start means whenever the host is powered off, what in that host we have 10 VMs, all VMs will be powered off. Suppose the host is power on, what in that host we have a 10 VMs, all VMs will be powered on automatically. But this feature we recommend to enable only when you have a single host. If you have a multiple host, this feature is not recommended to enable. Okay, that's the reason I mentioned as optional. So these all points covered as a ESXi post installation steps. Okay, so real time scenario will follow this method this way. So we before install we'll follow the pre installation, and we'll follow the post installation, and finally uh, post installation steps. Seems I've written the typo. Post installation, pre installation. Sorry for typo. Okay, so now we'll start with the lab. So before going to start the lab, I prepared all this information in a spreadsheet. So I'll open the spreadsheet and we'll test it one by one. Let me make it as a status. So this status we can observe. So in our test lab, verification of hardware compatibility is generally no need. We already know how to verify compatibility, right? How to verify? Just in the Google type VMware compatibility guide. When you type, you'll find the first link, VMware link. So here you can choose the latest one, and hardware, whatever hardware you want, you can choose. Suppose if you choose the Hewlett Packard Enterprise and update results, so you'll find the results. Uh, there is a chance some of the hardwares may not support for a latest version. Uh, for example, I select the 6.7 also. Okay, so these are all the hardware models. Okay, we already discussed the previous session, hope you know, but in our lab scenario we no need to validate the hardware because we are testing on a one of the virtual machine. So you are familiar with this method. And the compatibility, any server we can use. Okay, this is also okay. And do the cabling work, we are creating on a one of the virtual machine, so this is also no need. And this is also one of the important point to configure HPIL and all, and the remote management control IP address. This one also recommended in the real-time scenario, but in our lab, these steps are not required to do until these steps are no need. And ISO file is required. This step, I already downloaded the ISO file. I think, let me check my system. I prepared a software folder. Yeah, this is the ISO file. VMware Vmvisor. Visor is nothing but a hypervisor. This is a 7.0 U2 I downloaded already. So our step is correct. So download ISO file, done. And get the IP settings. So IP settings will prepare now. Anyhow, this is our test lab only. We can prepare the lab. Uh, I mentioned as server name, functionality, IP address. These checklists are very important when we are working in the real-time scenario. Sometimes if you do not have this list, there will be a chances of configuration errors. A checklist, it's easy to verify. Okay, I'm just preparing the checklist. We'll choose our convenience name. To configure the ESXi boss, we need a one Active Directory server. Within Active Directory, we can also configure DNS. Okay, we can mention the name AD01, or for easy understanding, AD DNS -01. I'm putting this name. And the IP address, we can choose one IP address. Let's say for testing, I'm choosing 192.168.10. Let me take the IP address as our ESX is 7, right? So we'll start with 70. This is IP I'm just choosing. So randomly, I can choose the 3 or 4 IPs for our lab. And the functionality, this is Active Directory and DNS server. We are going to configure this lab now. And the second one, will prepare one ESXi box. So ESX host 1. So we'll mention the name as ESXi 8001. And we are using, this is for a lab. So the server name also should maintain a proper naming convention, which is the best name we can use. Let's say I'm using the demolab.com. This is my domain name, and the server name will use the same name. Box demolab.com. This is my domain actually. We're going to configure, and the host name will maintain as a AD01. It's a simple AD01. And here is VMware ESXi box. Okay. Same way, we'll create a 3 ESX or 2 ESX. Anything is fine. We'll create ESX1 and ESX2. Okay. Today we'll create at least these three first. Okay. So name, I'm just for testing, I'm using very simple names, but in the companies, how they maintain is they maintain the location also. Suppose your server is in a Hyderabad, HYD AD01, HYD ESX01. When we see the name, we can understand that, okay, this is a Hyderabad ESX box. So that is also one method to configure the name. This one, I'm just giving a very simple names. Okay. And the domain, our domain, I'm going to configure as a demo lab. Okay, this is our setup. This remaining IPs we'll use it later. And normally for every IP address, we need to provide the subnet mask also. So subnet mask, I'm writing the subnet mask for all systems. We'll just paste it here, subnet mask. For all systems is /24. That means 255.255.0. This is common for all systems. And even we required a default gateway. If you have this list while configuring the host, it will be very easy. 192.168.10.1. So how I found all this information is if you type your local system, clear the information and type ipconfig. When you type here, you will see your local system IP address in the same series 192.168.10 series, and the last digit can be anything. I just choose the numbering from 70. Okay, and the 255 is our subnet mask. This is common for all our network, and the gateway also 10.1. The same information I typed here. Okay, and here 250 there is no 1 and 2. We'll use the same subnet mask. Okay, so this is our information. Okay, now it's in the tabular form. We'll start doing this. And operating system for this one, this first server will be a Windows operating system. OS, I mentioned as OS. It's a Windows 2022. And the ESX operating system is ESXi 7.0 U2. So same, sorry, Control D. Let me check which OS we downloaded. Yeah, 7.0 U2 only we downloaded. Okay, so these IPs we'll use for next session. Today's session will cover at least these three. Okay, so we'll follow the steps. The IP address information just now we prepared. So our lab, we are only networking team, and storage, we are only storage. I will show you how to configure storage and the DNS records. See, if you want to configure this DNS server, first we need to ready with the Active Directory machine. So that is the reason I will start configuring the AD first. Okay, so we already discussed the AD configuration of previous session. So today I will just go a bit faster. This is my new system. I am using the another test machine for lab practice. I will just show you quickly the configuration for my system. This is one of the Intel NUC mini box, desktop only. It's a Windows 11 Pro is running. Computer name I mentioned as Intel NUC. And this server CPUs are, we have a, how many CPUs we have? 12 CPUs and memory is 64 GB RAM. Okay. This is very small mini PC for lab testing purpose I'm using. Suppose if you type in the Google Intel NUC, you will find this mini PC. Intel NUC, enter. Go to the images. See, this is my system actually. It's a very mini PC. It comes with a high memory. I instead of Windows 10, I installed Windows 11, and we have the high memory 64 GB, so we can easily practice our labs. Okay, this is the system. I installed the VMware workstation. We already know how to install workstation. So I quickly create the 3 virtual machines based on our requirement. What is our requirement? We need to create a for one Windows server. The name should be same name, AD01, and this is the IP address, Subnet Mask gateway. Okay, let's start. I will go a bit faster because we know already how to install. Windows, let's choose the server operating system 2019 or 2022. This is only latest available, but it's okay. You choose 2019, but it will allows you to install 2022. And my VM name, as per our list, what is the name? AD01. And by default, it's creating in a documents folder. It's fine. Next, use the default settings. 2 GB can. And one important point I will tell you now. Let's say the operating system size. I'm just choosing the minimal size 40 GB. Next, finish. So VM creation. Any question before I move on to next point? No questions, right?
No question. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is one key point. If you have a more than one or two systems, let's say in our lab, we are planning to create 3 systems. If you want to create 3 servers to communicate between one server to another server to another server, we required a switch. So, but in our lab, we don't have a physical switch. What I'm going to do is, if you verify here, whenever we install the VMware workstation, go to your network connections, ncpa start run. When you type run ncpa.cpl, this is for network connections. This is my Wi-Fi connection, and this is my local network. These 2 network cards, this is a Bluetooth connection, and these 2 networks will come usually when you install a VMware workstation. So now my plan is this VMnet1, I'm planning to use it as a virtual switch. It will allow us for a common switch for these 3 VMs, ESX1, ESX2, AD01. I'm going to use this as a common network. So in order to do that, before install the operating system, just right click the VM, go to the edit settings. In edit settings, select the network adapter. We have a multiple options. You can use bridge networking, NAT, host only, custom. So now I am selecting a custom network, specific virtual network. See here, we have 3 options: VMnet 0, host only, VMnet 8. I'm planning to use VMnet 0. This VMnet 0 will act as a virtual switch. Okay, now click on OK. So my network also selected. Now I have to mount the ISO file. So ISO file, how we can mount? VM edit settings, CD DVD, mount the ISO file. So ISO files copy to C drive ISO folder. So Windows 2022 I'm selecting. So click on OK. Okay, ISO is mounted. Now power on. So press any key. Let me press enter. It will start install. So installation may take a while. Can we proceed in the meantime? Can we proceed to the ESX installation? Okay, here we can choose the desktop enterprise standard. Next, accept the license agreement. Next, and now fresh installation. Next, Okay, Windows OS installation is in progress. Now, so it may take another 10 to 15 minutes time. In the meantime, I'll create another VM for our ESX1. So ESX also we already know, but today I will show you with the post installation steps. So select VMware ESX, choose ESX7, and the name we can choose the name as say as per our document. As per our document, what is the name? ESXi01. And the two CPUs and memory is 4 GB. Let's go with the minimum configuration. Later, if you want to increase the CPU memory, we can increase. Okay, I'm just going with the default configuration first. And the hard disk to install the OS 10 GB is enough because the ESX OS size is very minimal, less than 500 MB. So VM creation is done for ESX1. Okay, so now what is the changes we have to do? We need to set the network as a common network just to avoid the communication issues. I'm choosing VMnet 0, click OK. Network is connected and now I am mounting the CD. So CD ISO file I already downloaded, VMware vMvisor. Just mount the ISO, click OK. Once the ISO is mounted, just power on. It will start booting from the ISO. See, now it started booting. Okay, if your mouse is just it's not released, just remember to press Ctrl Alt to release your mouse when you are working on the virtual machine. Okay, in the meantime, let's monitor the AD. AD is still going on and ESX1 also going on. And now I will start ESX2 also. Now click next, next. I will install later. ESX is selected. What is our second VM name? ESXi02. Yeah, ESXi02. Correct. 2 CPU, 4 GB memory, and network will modify SCSI, go with the default option, and always remember to choose virtual disk as a single file. And 10 GB, finish. Okay, my second ESX also ready. And now we'll change the network connection first. Network connection, all three VMs I'm maintaining the VMnet 0 just to avoid the communication issues. Now mount the CD. So CD will mount or we'll just wait once this is finished because we have only one ISO file. Or else we'll just recopy this file and try. Copy. I'm just copying to documents. Okay, this is my second copy. So now we'll mount this ISO file. ESX2 CD DVD. We can mount the same ISO as well, but just to avoid the slowness, click OK. Now we have second copy is also okay. Power on. Okay. Hope you know all these steps, right? That's why I'm just going a bit faster. Now ESX1 still loading, ESX2 also loading, and AD server OS installation is completed. Now we need to install the VMware tools. Assign the password first. Password you can give any character, any password. Generally password must be 8 characters and one special character and few alphabets and numerical number. Okay, now click finish. So if you see the screen, it's not a full screen. It will enhance all the drivers only when you install the VMware tools. So password. Once log into the VM, the first step better install the VMware tools first. Right click the VM, install VMware tools. Yes. Excuse me. Okay, VMware tools CD is mounted. Just double click. And the system may get automatic IP address DHCP. Better we can change the IP address to as per our sheet. Our sheet, whatever IP we given, the same IP will provide. Even in the real-time scenario, every company they maintain some inventory sheet for all the servers and IPs. The same way I'm just preparing. So DNS server we haven't configured. Now we are going to configure DNS on a AD server. See the VMware tools installation. It's pretty simple. Just next finish. See if you notice here status, it's installing all the drivers. Video driver. Yeah. Now you see the video perform display is increased. So now just click finish. It's Windows common troubleshooting step is restart. When you restart, most of the issues will resolve same way. Any changes you did on the system, all will take effect only after restart. So just click yes. Okay, in the meantime, we'll check the ESX01 status. See, we discussed to install the ESX, just press enter. To accept the license, F11. Now it is scanning the disk and we'll start. And we'll check the hard disk we selected. We given hard disk size is 10 GB. So same hard disk, press enter. Now language US default, enter. And the password we have to give. And remember ESX host default administrator is root. Enter. See, to install ESX, press F11. Okay. So we need to wait for a while to complete the installation process. In the meantime, we'll go to the ESX2. So same steps, enter F11. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Okay, F11 to install. Okay. So ESX1 is getting ready, 2 also getting ready, and the AD server already up. So let's go send control alt delete. Once I log into Active Directory, sorry, admin, AD01 server, what is the recommendation step as per our VM post installation steps? What we have to do? Go to the local server, see the computer name is, yeah, change the computer name. Computer name and virtual machine display name should be same name. So just click on win this name and modify to AD01. Okay. Now click on OK. Click on OK. Click on it. See, changes will take effect after you restart this computer. So let's restart first. See, almost installation completed. Remove the installation media before rebooting. So let's remove the media. Go to the edit settings, select CD, uncheck the connection status. Click OK. Now enter to reboot. Okay. We'll check the ESX02. Same way it's completed. Right click the ESX2 settings, uncheck the CD DVD. Click OK. Once it's click OK, now enter. Okay. So ESX2 is rebooting, ESX1 also rebooting, and AD server is up. Let's go to the send control alt delete. See how beauty of VMware workstation. If we do not have this virtualization software, we cannot run this many three VMs parallelly one by one. Just imagine that is a purpose of virtualization. Even the administration is easy. Now we are doing parallelly multiple tasks. Suppose we do not have workstation software. We need a three systems to maintain these three. Okay, now we'll see the local server. Local server name is AD01. Okay, and the firewall default is on. If you want to off, you can off. Advanced settings. Come on. Okay, it's open. Properties. Just off the domain profile. Press O. Private. Press O. Public. O. Apply. Okay. Okay, I just turn off the firewall. Close. Close. And also the remote desktop connection. If you want to enable, just enable the remote desktop connection. Apply. Okay. And IP address. See, default DHCP is enabled. Just click on Ethernet, right click, properties, TCP IP4. IP means Internet Protocol version 4. Click on properties. This is automatic IP. Just change it to static IP. Manual IP is nothing but a static IP. So what is our IP as per our sheet? Our sheet to, yeah, our IP address is 70 for AD. And this is a subnet mask. One is the gateway. So same way we can enter here. 192.168.10.70 is the IP address, and the subnet mask, again press tab, gateway. 192.168.10.1, and the DNS, we are going to configure DNS on a same server. So I'm giving the same IP address, 192.168.10.70. Okay, because DNS going to configure on a same machine. Click on close. So how to configure Active Directory? Can anyone tell me? How to configure Active Directory role? Go to the dashboard, add roles and
Also,
yeah, yeah, correct, Jayalakshmi. Go to the add roles and features, click on next, and here use the default option. Here remember one key point, to configure the domain controller, we required administrator account and also network settings. IP address should be static IP and the latest patches. We already downloaded the latest OS, so patches we covered, IP we given, and we are logging with the administrator account. Now good to go. Next, next, next. Yeah, here when you want to configure the domain controller, the main service is Active Directory Domain Services. When you select Active Directory Domain Services, there will be additional features also will add automatically. And there is another feature we want to configure, that is DNS. See, DNS server tools also will add automatically. Select DNS, continue. When you select AD and DNS, you will find the nodes here itself. Select the AD, you will find the importance of Active Directory here. Active Directory domain services store the information of objects on the network and makes this information available to users and network administrators. Same way, when you select the DNS, see, domain naming server provides the name resolution for TCP/IP networks. DNS server is easier to manage when it is installed same server as Active Directory. Even the Microsoft also recommending configure DNS on a same server as Active Directory. So we are doing the same. If you select the Active Directory domain service role, you can install the configure DNS server and Active Directory domain service to work together. Okay, as per best practice only we are doing. AD on the same machine, DNS also on a same this server. Click next. So these features at present no need. Later, whenever we require any feature, we will configure. Now click next. Now next, next. See, restart the destination server automatically if required. Okay, we can enable this option just for safety. Now click on install. So installation is in progress. Installation started. Most of our administration task, when you read the instruction, we can understand what's going on and all. Okay, it's in progress. We'll just check the status of ESX. Okay, it's already done, but it is a static DHCP IP. We'll modify the DHCP IP on ESX1 as well as ESX2. So it is also DHCP IP. We'll modify. Once the AD is ready, we'll do the ESX01 and ESX02. Is there any questions until now? Okay, now you can see the message configuration required installation. See, still we need to do some configuration. That's why in the right side corner, you will see the yellow warning symbol. So configuration we can do, installation is succeeded. So in order to do the configuration steps, it may require a restart first. Click on finish. We'll try, will it allows or not? Yeah, post deployment configuration. So what it is saying, promote the server to a domain controller. So click on this message, you will find this widget. Active Directory Domain Services Configuration widget. To add a domain control to existing domain, first option and second option, these two are the existing information, but we are going to create a new one. So select add new forest. And what is the domain name we are planning to choose? It's a demolab.com. This name testing purpose, I choose this name. There is no need to use the same name. You can use any different name in your home PC. Okay, so it's our company name. Let's say demolab.com. So selected the demo lab. Next. See, forest functional level default it is showing 2016, domain also 2016. Normally, even if your office environment, if your system servers or any server running with old version, you can choose old, or else you can leave it the default option and try this server. We need to enter the administrator password. Let me enter the password. Okay, enter the password. Next. Okay, so now DNS option, it says delegation and all. Normally the warning during configuration, we can safely ignore. Click next. So NetBIOS name, it will detect. We'll wait until it detect. Even the install option also not yet highlighted. Yeah, now it's detected automatically. Our domain name detected demo lab. Now click next. Okay, default Active Directory database folder, log folder, all will stored on a C drive Windows. Click next. Now this is all our configuration selection. Now click on next. Prerequisites check. Even before configuration, it's checking the pre-requirements. Okay, it's showing the green color. All prerequisites checks passed successfully. So click install to begin installation. So let's click on install. It may take a while. Finish. So in the meantime, we'll just open our spreadsheet. See, DNS server is going to build. See, I may just mention as in progress. Okay, and the Mount ISO ESX installation we already done. We created here 2 in ESX boxes. Okay, and how about the next step? Enable SSH will do now. These all steps will finish. Sorry, I'm taking a longer time today. Will it be okay? Okay to proceed?
Okay.
Yeah, we will complete this.
Yeah, the server was successfully configured. Now click on close. Okay, so to verify the server is a primary domain controller or not, how we can, okay, it's restarting. Let's restart. Once it is up, we'll create a DNS records. See, create a host a record and pointer record in DNS server. I will show you the 14th point. This is very important in the real-time scenario also. Okay, before it's boot up, we'll modify the IP address in ESXi01. To modify anything, you can see the screen, it is showing F2 to customize. You can press the F2 function 2 and enter the password. Okay, when you press F2, the first option is in our system customization configure password. We already configured password. The second option, configure management network. When you click management network, there is a network adapter. We have one network adapter, VMNIC 0. See, NIC also it's added with virtual name, VMNIC 0. Virtual machine and network interface code 0. Excuse me. And VLAN is optional. We can configure later. And IPv4. This IPv4 means Internet Protocol version 4. This one we need to configure as per our spreadsheet. What is our requirement IP? 192.168.10.71, and the subnet mask is correct and gateway also correct. To save this information, press enter. Okay, now I given as a 71 IP address. And how about the DNS configuration? See, DNS configuration, it is showing as use the following DNS. DNS server is, what is our DNS server? Just now we configured the DNS 192.168.10. What is the IP address? 70. And the alternate DNS, we don't have alternate DNS, just leave it blank. And host name, what is the host name we are planning to create? ESXi01 dot, our domain name. What is our domain name? demolab.com. In our real-time scenario, you can enter your ESX host name and your company domain. Okay, suppose my company is HPE, like esxi01.hpe.com. Okay, now enter. So DNS host name also set, and custom DNS suffixes. Here you can just enter your domain name, demolab.com. Click enter. So custom DNS suffixes also already set. So just to leave this screen, just press escape. When you press escape, it will ask you to apply changes, restart management network. Okay, press Y. Okay, it's done. Again, yes, escape. So this is the screen. See, when you see the ESX host screen, what is the wizard it is saying? To manage this host, go to the browser and type this name, either ESX01 name, or you can type full IP address to access this ESXi host. Okay, and the same configuration we can do for ESX2 also. What is the wizard to modify? Press F2, enter the password. So password no need to set. Configure management network. To change the settings, press enter. Network adapters no need to modify. Go to the IPv4, enter, and you can change it to static. And what is our IP address? 70. As per our sheet, it's a 72. And the subnet mask, gateway, all are okay. Enter. And the DNS configuration we need to modify. What is our DNS? 70. And host name, what is our host name? esxi02.demolab.com. Enter. Okay, and DNS suffix means we need to enter the domain name. It's a demolab.com. Enter. Okay, so everything is set. Need to restart the service and escape. Okay, so ESX2 also ready as per our spreadsheet. So we prepared the ESX2 IP 72 and ESX1 IP is 71. Okay, as per our sheet, these two are ready. Let's make it green. And now this one also ready. And demo lab also ready. Uh, we are going to create a DNS records now. So I will show you how to create a DNS records. Go to the AD server, login, send control all delete. So you will see the demo lab domain name here. Okay, enter the password. Once you log in, to log into the DNS server, there is a two options. Either you can open the DNS console from the tools, you can manage the DNS. This is one method. Go to the tools, select DNS. This is one method. And the second method is you can open also from the run command. Run command is just type run, search run. Seems it's taking time. The command is dnsmgmt.msc. See, when you type the run, you can type the command dnsmgmt.msc. Okay, so DNS console like this also we can open. When you select the DNS server, we can see our server name AD01. Just select this AD01, expand. You will find some of the options. See, there are the multiple options: forward lookup zone, reverse lookup zone, trust points, conditional forwarders, route hints forwarders. In the next classes, I will explain you in detail about DNS, but in this session, just understand the definitions. DNS means domain naming server, and AD is our AD01 is our DNS server name, and forward lookup zone is nothing but it will resolve host name to IP address. That is called forward lookup. Reverse lookup zone means it resolves IP address to hostname. It's a just vice versa of forward lookup zone. And the trust points, if you have any other domains, we need to configure trust point. And if conditional forwarder is nothing but if you want to forward the link to the different URL or different IP address, we'll configure conditional forwarders. But now I'm going to create a DNS record. How we can create DNS record is select the our forward lookup zone, right click. You can select our domain name. Sorry, select our domain name. Right click. Our domain name is demolab.com. Right click the domain name. You will find the multiple records. So the what is our record name? Host A record. A, or we can say A record. So select new host record. What is my ESX host name? ESX host name is ESXi01. When you type ESX01, this is the name fully qualified domain name FQDN, and IP address. What is my ESX IP address? 192.168.10.71. This is my ESX1 IP address. And if you want to create pointer record, you need to go to reverse lookup zone and create. That is one method. And the easy method is same the host record, you can select this option. When you select this button, create a associated pointer record. Pointer record means IP address to hostname. It will create automatically on the reverse lookup zone. Just add host. It says warning. The associated pointed record cannot be created, probably because referenced reverse lookup zone cannot be found. So there is no reference lookup zones. That's why it's giving the warning message. It's fine. We will create now. So click on done. So when you see here, ESX host record is created. Okay. Now reverse lookup zone, there is no reverse lookup zone. See, that is the reason it's giving the error message. I am creating a reverse lookup zone now. Right click the reverse lookup zone, select new zone. What is my zone is? My zone we should select as a primary zone. This is the first primary zone. Now click on next for demo labs. It's a IP version 4. Next, I need to enter my IP address range. My IP address range is 192.168.10 series. So you can just enter only the series. You no need to enter the entire IP address. Next, next, and finish. See, now I created a reverse lookup zone. If I want to create the record now, what is the method? Just select here, double click properties, pointer record is already there, you can just update or refresh. It will create automatically. Sometimes it may take a while to create automatically, or else you can create manually. New pointer record. What is my pointer record? 71, and my host name is Esxi 01. Okay, or else we can click on browse and select our host name. What is the record? This is the one. Click on OK. Okay, click on OK. So pointer record also created. Same way for we can create the record for second host. Right click the demolab.com, select new host, and you can enter our ESX host name, ESXi02. When you select the 02, the fully qualified domain name is created, and enter the IP address. What is IP address? 192.168.10.72. When you select 72, and you better choose the pointer record, this time hopefully no error message, it will create automatically. Click on add host. See, the record for ESXi2 domainlab.com was successfully created. Click on OK. So click on done. Go to the reverse lookup zone. You will find only 71. It's not created 72. Just refresh. When you refresh, you will find 72. Okay, this is the way we can create the PTR record. PTR means pointer record, as well as we can create a host records. Host record means A. Okay, so hope you understand the steps how to create host record, how to create a pointer record. Is it clear?
Yes.
This step is done. And now when you go to the sheet 1, this step also done. Now the post installation steps, maybe today too late. I will cover the post installation steps tomorrow. Will it be okay?
Okay.
Okay, you can practice the until these steps. As usual, we'll open our master sheet. So what is the topics we covered today? We'll just quickly recall. So in our series session, what is the topic we discussed first? We discussed some basic virtualization terminology. What is hypervisor? What is operating system? What is vSphere and all we discussed. So basic virtualization concepts. And what is other one we discussed? Esxi server overview. Any other we discussed? Esxi host build. Yes.
Esxi Architecture.
Yeah. Esxi architecture.
Host build procedure.
And Esxi host build procedure. So when comes to our lab, topics we covered in lab.
Esxi host build procedure, real-time scenario.
Okay, Esxi
In
host.
pre-installation steps, verify hardware compatibility list and select the compatibility list hardware.
Okay.
Cabling
Mm-hmm.
and HP, ILO and Dell
Okay.
configuration, and connect to the server remote management control IP.
Pre-installation and installation procedure of ESX.
Yeah, correct.